Hi, this is Debbie from Organic Oasis in California Zone 9B. Today I am making some sandwich buns with sourdough starter. So I have been using the Perfect Loaf recipes. I love this book and I highly recommend it. It's basically taught me how to make sourdough bread. I have made English muffins, I have made rolls, and they've all come out fabulous. I've also made scones and other things from this book with discard, sourdough discard. So today I'm baking the sandwich buns, and I keep a small starter. I started this in March 2024, and it just has 5 grams of starter, 50 grams of all-purpose flour, 50 grams of water, and I refresh it once a day. And then I make my levain from this. So for this particular recipe, here is the levain. The levain was 63 grams of starter, 63 grams of water, and 63 grams of white flour. So now I'm going to make the dough from using this, what they call a levain, which is just basically another sourdough starter that you take from your I would call this the mother, the mother starter and the baby starter. So this is the one I do. I refresh every day and keep, and then I make more starter when I'm going to bake. The recipe now calls for 182 grams of butter. So I use my scale. I've got 182 grams. I'm going to now put the starter onto a plate like this, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it into smaller pieces. Later you'll see it just basically gets put into the blender, into the KitchenAid mixer, and I just want smaller pieces of butter. It will soften as I'm getting everything else ready. So I'm just going to cut little pieces like this. Next, the recipe says to mix the dough. So you basically are putting in your flour, milk, egg, sugar, water, salt, and ripe levain. And you can mix it on low speed, and I use a KitchenAid. So I'll be mixing it in my bowl here. Basically, I do almost the entire recipe using just this one KitchenAid mixing bowl. So I have this scale here, I have it set to grams, and I just put my KitchenAid bowl right on here, and I make sure that it is on 0. So I zero out the grams, and then I just mix everything, I add everything in here. So the first thing I'm going to be adding is the flour, 250 grams of white flour. So I'm just gonna go like this and scoop it in. Sometimes, you know, I'll get a little bit more or less, and that's okay usually. I try my hardest to be very precise, but I'm also always in a hurry and trying to get things done quickly. So but I've never made any sourdough from these recipes that failed. Every recipe I've made so far has been perfect. And you can look at my Instagram where I have pictures of all the sourdough that I've baked. So here I've got 250 grams of white flour, all-purpose 11% King Arthur. Just King Arthur, 11% protein white flour. Now I'm moving into my wheat flour. He says to use whole white wheat flour, but all I have is the King Arthur wheat flour, and it calls for 208. Remember, zero out your scale and just add now 208. So I'm watching my scale. I'm at 93, 130, and I'm trying to get to 208. Okay, I'm at 205, 206. There we go, 208 for the wheat flour. Next, we add milk. And we're just basically, we're not looking at the temperature as of yet, so we're just gonna add milk, and we're adding 182 grams. Again, zero out your scale, and now pour in 182. I'm only using my organic. Well, let me do this. 182. Okay, see, I got 186 in. Oh, well. So I'm just using this. It's Kirkland Organic Reduced Fat Milk, 2%. Okay. Next, I'm going to add my eggs. 182 grams, or 3 to 4 eggs. I'm just gonna go ahead, zero out, and I'm gonna start cracking the eggs in. We'll see how many grams. That is, one egg is 56 grams. I need 182. Okay, I've got 111 grams. I've got 168. So he says 182. I'm thinking for 3 eggs, it's almost 50, it's almost 60 grams per egg. I'm gonna stick with 3 because I think it'll push me way over grams if I add another egg. So I'm just sticking with that. Okay, so I've got my flour, my milk, my eggs, now sugar. So we want 26 grams of sugar. So, 26 grams of sugar. So again, zero out. I have my little sugar thing, my little sugar pour. It's OXO. 26 grams. So I'm up to 19, 23, 24, 25, and 26. There's my sugar. Next, water. When you make sourdough, water temperature is really important. So next, this recipe calls for 21 grams of water. The desired dough temperature for this recipe is 75. And today, it's a little cool in Northern California. We're actually getting fall for the first time in a long time. So my kitchen's on the cooler side. I think my kitchen's right now it's at 74. That's not that cool, but it's cooler than normal. So my sourdough, I know that was 74. My sourdough, I want the dough at 75. So my dough is gonna be a little bit on the colder side because I've already added cold eggs and cold milk. So I'm gonna, when I add my water, I'm going to heat up, I heated up my water in my microwave, and I have this nifty temperature thermostat. So I'm gonna look to see how hot I got it. So right now my water temperature is showing 77, 76, 77 degrees. That's perfect. But if you put in, say, ice cold water from if you have a purifier in your refrigerator and you put in ice cold water and your temperature of your sourdough is cold, it will delay the rising time when you go to proof it and do bulk fermentation and proofing. So it will delay your baking. So it's important to get your water temperature right and try to get your dough at the right temperature so that you can complete your baking in a shorter amount of time. The recipe I'm making is supposed to take 10 hours from the beginning to the end. I started late at 10, so I want to go to bed. I don't want to be up at midnight baking my rolls. So that's why I'm being very cautious about measuring this. Okay, so I'm turning on my scale, zeroing it out, and I need 21 grams of water. So here's my heated water. So 21 grams is not a lot, so go slowly because you'll go over. So I got 22 grams of water. Salt, which I like to use my sea salt. And it actually calls for sea salt. 10 grams of sea salt, zero out. And very slowly, again, this doesn't take a lot to get to 10 grams. So go patiently, slowly, and there's my 10 grams. And last but not least, my ripe levain. So my ripe levain is here. And it calls for 189 grams. Now, I've baked enough to know that I doubt this is gonna be 189 grams. So I may have to actually use some sourdough discard. So let's see, I zeroed out. Let's see how much levain I have here. Okay, so this is, here we go. Well, actually this may be perfect. So right now it's at 114. I need 189 actually. I'm at 136. Oh, it's gonna be a tight squeeze here. Let's see. Okay, I'm at 148. Let's see here. 166. I'm scraping every little bit out that I can possibly get out. 169. 170. It only calls for 180. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. So I needed 189 grams of levain, and I ended up getting 171. So what I usually do, and it has not hurt my sourdough, is I top it off. I finish up with just a little bit of my discard from the refrigerator. This is another reason why I always keep some of my discard. So I'm just gonna end up having to add, I think, 71, 81, 18 grams of my sourdough discard to reach the 189 grams that's called for in the recipe. It should be fine. Follow along and you'll see how great these rolls, these sandwich buns turn out. Okay. All right, so I'm at 171. So now I'm gonna take my discard. This is just a day old discard. I'm gonna go ahead and plop some of that into here. So I got I'm trying to get up to 189. Okay, so I'm at 179. There we go, it's at 188 right now. So just a little tiny bit more. Okay. 189, actually it went to 190. Oh well. Okay, so there's the start. So now that we have all of our ingredients in the KitchenAid bowl, it is time to mix it up. And you're gonna go ahead and use your dough hook. But what I did was I purchased one of these. This is actually called a Knead Ace. I don't know if you can see this. I bought it on Amazon. It just snaps like this. Your dough hook snaps onto this. And it just keeps the dough from rising up and going over the top of this. A few times when I made bread that happened and it was a real mess. So this helps a lot. And it came with two. I gave one to my daughter and kept one, so I only need one. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and put it on. We're gonna knead the dough on the lowest, and once we think everything's incorporated, we're gonna go ahead and put it up to 2 on the KitchenAid and go for 3 to 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and scrape down the sides. There we go. I finished the mixing part and now I'm going to go ahead and put it on kneading. It's on medium, which is on the KitchenAid is a 2, and I'm gonna go for the full 5 minutes. It calls for 3 to 5, but I find that when I go for 5 minutes or the longer time recommended, my dough is just stronger and it's easier to manage and it comes out much better. I'm now turning my KitchenAid to 2, medium, for 5 minutes. So now we leave the dough sitting for 10 minutes. I leave it in my KitchenAid bowl, and what I do is I always have a bowl with some cold water, and I just use my fingers to scrape off the dough. And if your hands are wet with cold water, the dough does not stick as badly as if you don't use water. And I bought this on Amazon. It's a cool little lid that fits right over your KitchenAid bowl. It's AIEVE is the brand. And it just snaps on, and you want to cover your dough at this point because you don't want it to dry out. So, and it's got this little measuring cup thing, but it snaps right here and it seals your dough. So I'm going to leave this sitting for 10 minutes and then I'll be back. So it's been 10 minutes and now it's time to continue mixing it. So the lid comes off and we continue mixing it on medium speed for 4 to 6 minutes. Again, I like to mix the longer time because it strengthens the dough quicker and better for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the lock here on the side of my KitchenAid, and I'm gonna start the mixing and let it go for 6 more minutes. So this has been mixing for another 6 minutes. And as you can see, the dough is clinging to the hook. And the hook, when it goes around, you can see the dough is being slapped on the side. And that's what you want. This is how it should look. So now it's time to add the butter 1 pat at a time. We want to go back to low speed. So we're going to go to low speed. And 1 pat at a time, we're going to add the butter. It will start to blend in and incorporate into the dough. We want to wait a few seconds in between to let it really incorporate into the dough. This process will take about 5 minutes. So I'm going to put in this and I will continue to add the butter into the dough, and it will take me about 5 minutes to complete this. Now this has been mixing for 5 minutes. I've added all the butter. So now I turn up the KitchenAid and I mix it one more time for 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and mix it for 3 minutes again until it smooths out and the dough starts sticking to the hook again. It's almost happening now, but we need to strengthen the dough a little bit more. Okay, so the dough has been mixing for 3 more minutes. It's looking good. Now we need to, this dough is looking really good. So now what we need to do is take the temperature of the dough and compare it to the desired dough temperature. They call it the DDT, desired dough temperature, which was 75. So let me put this in here. So my dough is 70, it came to 77 degrees. So I'm a little bit off, but it's not bad. It just means that when I start to do the bulk fermentation and the proofing, it may go faster because the dough is warmer. So the whole process will be quicker. So I will know that. So it's supposed to bulk ferment for 3.5 hours and then proof for 3.5 hours. I may actually end up proofing for maybe 1 or 2 hours because my dough is a little warmer. So now what I'm gonna do is take this off, and I'm using wet hands because the wet hands will help this to come off without sticking all over my hands. Okay. And what we're gonna do now is, again, we're gonna cover it back up. I'm gonna remove this because I won't be using this anymore. Okay. And we're gonna cover this back again like this. Cover it up. And right now, what we're gonna move on to next is, it's called bulk fermentation. And it's 3.5 total hours at room temperature. And we will be doing 3 sets of stretches and folds at 30-minute intervals. So I will show you after 30 minutes how I do it in the KitchenAid. So it has been 30 minutes and it is time to do the very first stretch and fold. So here's the dough, and I just like to keep everything in the KitchenAid bowl. It's just much easier for me. I have my cold water here, so I dip it in, And basically, I grab down the dough and flip it up and over. This dough is very sticky, so I got to do a lot of, I turn it, I grab up and over. It's very sticky dough, so I'm gonna do a lot of this. The recipe just calls for doing one set, but I find that the more I do, you can see the dough is not as sticky. It starts to get less sticky, and it basically it's getting stronger. The dough is getting stronger. So if I feel like my dough is very sticky and maybe a little underdeveloped, it can actually handle more of these stretches, folds and stretches. You can get a little bit more, tougher with this. You can go up higher. You can also dig up some of the dough that's sticking to the side. This dough is, because it has butter in it, is going to be a lot more of a stickier dough. And I guess you would say it's more hydrated. It's just a wetter dough. But the more you do this, the stronger it gets and the less sticky. Okay, so there you go. I'm gonna leave it, and in 30 minutes, I'm gonna come back and do another set. And then 30 minutes after that, I will do one more set of stretches and folds. So in 3.5 hours, we do 3 sets of stretches and folds, 30 minutes apart. However, after I do my last set, if this is still really kind of sticky, I might actually do another 1 or 2 sets of the stretches and folds. It just depends on how I feel the dough is looking. So it's time for the second set of stretches and folds. And I just want to show you how much better this dough is looking. See how it's starting to expand and it's kind of holding together. It's shiny and it's smoothing out. Okay, so this is the second set. So again, dipping my hands in cold water, and I start to do this. See how it's not even sticking as much to my hands. The dough is coming together better. It's strengthening. Okay. And so I'm just, again, I don't follow the rule of just 360 degrees 4 times. I just do it until I feel, you can actually feel the dough becoming more elastic and more just holding together better. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but it's not as sticky. It's not even sticking to my hands hardly at all. And I can kind of even lift the dough like that. Lift it up. See how it's staying? It's not sticking to the bowl or anything. I can almost lift. See how I can lift it up like that? Okay, so it's really, the dough is getting really strong and is coming along nicely. So after this, 30 more minutes, one more stretch and fold, and then we let it rest for a little bit. So it is now time for the very last set of stretch and folds. And if you look at the dough, it just keeps looking better and better. It's really holding its shape now. As you can see, it's smoothing out, it's shiny. And you can see it's not sticking anymore to the edge. It has like a nice puffed edge to it. So I had mentioned before that sometimes I will continue to do stretch and folds depending on what the dough looks like and feels like, but today this dough is nice and it's ready to just sit and do a bulk fermentation for another 2 hours. So this has been sitting now for an hour and a half. We did 3 stretches and folds every 30 minutes. And now it just sits and it does a bulk fermentation now for another 2 hours. So the dough is just gonna sit and rest. And then when it's done and my timer goes off, it will be divided and shaped into the little rounds, the little sandwich roll rounds. And I will shape the dough. Then it will proof another couple hours, depending on, again, it may be 3 hours, it could be earlier. I don't think it's gonna be later. And then we bake it. So this is nice because these sandwich rolls, I'm calling them sandwich rolls, they're hearty sandwich buns, but these can be made in 1 day. It takes about 10 hours for the entire recipe, which is really nice. You don't do an overnight bulk fermentation or anything like that. It's just 1 day, and I like that. Get up in the morning and have your fresh rolls by the evening. Tomorrow I plan to make some bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches with our tomatoes that we're still harvesting here. So that's it. I'm gonna leave it sitting and doing bulk fermentation for 2 more hours. The dough has gone through bulk fermentation and now it's time to shape and proof the dough. So I will be tossing the dough out and then dividing it into 10 little balls, each about 121 grams. And then we'll be letting it proof for about close to 3 hours, depending on how my dough is doing. So this is the surface I'm working on. It's just a silicone baking mat. I have a rice flour, which I like to use. This is rice flour, and I sprinkled it on here. And I also put a little bit on the side so that I have some to use if I need more. I'm gonna go ahead and scrape out the dough. I like silicone, the silicone bowl scrapers because they tend to be non-stick. Okay, this is a very soft dough. It's a little more difficult to work with. I'm getting everything out of here that I can possibly get out just by scraping here. Okay, I think that's good. I can also use my hands to try to get it out. Anyway, I think that's good. I'm gonna take some flour and just sprinkle it liberally over the top. And what I'm trying to do is divide this dough into 10 pieces, 120 grams each. So I actually need to have my scale out here. I think you can see if I do it this way. I may have to move this over a little bit so you can see. There we go. Okay, I'll put a little bit of flour on here as well. Okay. So what I want to do is get enough flour where I can work with this. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is cutting off pieces of the dough and weighing it. I'll be forming it into a ball and seeing how much it weighs. Eventually I'll get an idea as to how, okay, so this is, let me pick it back up and plop it. I have to get to 0. And we want 120, so that's way too big. I'm gonna take it off and cut it. Okay, plop it back on. So that's 119. If we want to be precise, we can cut another little piece like this. That's 123. So it's going to be a little tricky to get if you want it just perfect. Let me try 120. Okay, 121. I'm going to leave it like that. So here's my first piece of dough. And I'm just going to leave it over here for now. I'm going to keep measuring and cutting. We want each piece 120. Perfect. $122. I'm just going to leave it at that. I went ahead and shaped 5 of the sandwich buns, and now I will show you how I did it. I'm using the bench scraper and my floured hands. Like, make sure you have plenty of flour, and I like rice flour. So basically, I'm just using the method where you put this at an angle and you use your floured hand to scrape it. And you're kind of pushing it against the bench scraper. And you're kind of like using pressure and you're rolling it. There's a few different methods. You can do it this way. You can also push the dough and pull it. But I like to just do the round cupping. It's like a cupping method. And as you see, the dough starts to get round and it smooths out. And if you have any trouble, you can use more flour. And I'm trying to get a perfect little shape. And then finally, let me get my pan. In the recipe, it tells you to use 2 sheet pans and keep them like 3 to 5 inches apart. They are gonna rise more while they're proofing. So see how nice this is now? I'm just gonna scoop it up and plop it on the pan. It looks like this. So I'm gonna finish doing this. Okay. To go. Lovely, look at this one. So we are done with the shaping. We have our 2 trays here. Here's this one and this one. So we'll have 10 rolls, sourdough sandwich buns. And now it's time to proof them. So you will need a large clear bag. I have my sheet pan, and I'm just using, instead of parchment paper, an Amazon basic silicone mat. You put it in like this. These will sit out on the counter. And I just take the pan and I clip it like this so that the plastic cannot, so the plastic seals. The only reason why we're really doing this is so we don't dry out our dough. So we do want it airtight. So basically I'm just gonna clip this like this. And pull this up and clip it like this. So we clip it up. And if you have a bigger bag, that's even better, but you end up like this. So we do both bags and both trays, and we just basically leave it sitting out for about 3.5 hours to proof. Then it goes right into the oven to cook, and I'll show you how to do that next. Thanks for watching. It's been almost 3 hours since my sandwich buns have been proofing. And so now I'm going to do what they call a poke test. And a poke test is when you go ahead and you make sure you get your finger wet. You just poke the bread, the dough. Now, if the dough springs back and fills back in quickly, it needs more proofing time. If it very slowly springs back, perhaps not quite filling in, then this means it's ready to bake. And if it stays depressed and doesn't spring back at all, it's probably overproofed. So you need to bake it as soon as possible. So I'm gonna do it one more time. Hopefully you can see this. So mine, this dough here, it is springing back very slowly. Not quite filling in. It did fill in over here, but it's taking a long time to fill in. So this means that the dough is relaxed and has risen sufficiently and is ready to be baked. So I'm just heating up the oven right now, and as soon as the oven's ready, I'm going to put these buns into the oven and cook them. It hasn't been 3.5 hours, but like I said earlier, what happens is sometimes, especially when the temperature of the dough is warmer or it's warmer in the house, the dough may actually go quicker than if it's cold. So because my dough was a little bit warmer, I expected that it was going to be done quicker. So this is completely normal. The sandwich buns are looking wonderful. They have finished proofing. I have the oven heated to 425, so it's ready to go. And now what I need to do with these buns, I made an egg wash, 1 egg and 1 tablespoon of milk. It calls for whole milk or cream. I just used my 2% because I didn't have anything else. It should be fine. And now what I'm going to do is coat this. I'm going to go ahead and brush the egg wash on top of the buns. I'm going to sprinkle them with sesame seeds. Then I'm going to put them in the oven, and it basically calls to have the because I have 2 of the pans, 2 of these, I'm going to be baking both of them in the oven at the same time. So they recommend that you put one of the racks on the top third and 1 rack on the top third at the bottom. And then after 10 minutes, you will rotate these trays. You will flip them, rotate them around, and then switch the shelf that they're on, the rack that they're on. so that they get evenly baked. So they only bake for a total of 20 to 25 minutes. So this will go very quick. You will see they will puff up, grow bigger, and darken. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then once they're done cooking, they actually sit out for 5 minutes, then you put them on a baking rack and let them cool. They should keep, I keep my bread in a bread box, and I have special bread bags to keep them fresh. And they should keep for 3 to 4 days in a bread box or in some kind of a bag where you don't want them to get too moist, but you don't want them to totally dry out. If you don't plan to use them in 3 to 4 days, freeze them. And that's what I do. I usually freeze, them in 2s because it's just Tim and I. So I'm putting the egg wash on. Again, it's just 1 egg and a tablespoon of milk. These are toasted sesame seeds. Okay. Okay, so the buns are coming out of the oven. I'm going to take the temperature. They should be 204 inside if they're ready. So let's check it out. 209, 210. So they are ready, more than ready. Well, they're done. And look at them. They are absolutely beautiful. Oh my gosh, they're gonna taste so good. Well, here they are. Aren't they beautiful? And they smell so delicious. Oh my God. So this was a long day, 10 hours, but I came out with 10 wonderful sandwich buns. And Tim and I love to make BLT sandwiches with these, using our organic tomatoes, which we have a whole bunch sitting here to use. And also we make salmon burgers, turkey burgers, egg sandwiches. So I hope you try this recipe. I hope you enjoy making sourdough breads and buns and scones and all kinds of yummy things. If you like this type of video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe and follow along. We're Organic Oasis. We're in Northern California, Zone 9B. We love to grow in our garden, all organic, and then we like to come in and show you how we use some of the things that we grow to make delicious things, recipes. So we have tomatoes we're always cooking with, and now we're also making our own bread. So please follow along. Thank you so much. Happy baking.